Hey guys, what's up? It's King Christo here, and today I bring you pre-built PCs in Peril Part 5. Now look, I will admit that lately pre-built PCs in Peril episodes have been quite difficult to make. This is mainly due to the worldwide shortage of DDR4, causing RAM prices to rise rapidly, and large companies buying tens of thousands of GPUs to mine, leaving prices for just about any card skyrocketing. Needless to say, I don't make this series just to diss pre-builts. I make it for fun and give the pre-builts a very fair chance. I will admit that it is true in some cases buying a pre-built computer is actually worth it. However, I've put in some extra work to find some good systems for today's episode, and so that in the future you can save money. So without further ado, let's see whether or not these pre-builts are worth it. The first system I found on newegg.com, and at first glance didn't seem too bad. It was a PC by iBuyPower that costed $1,050. Inside was an i7-7700, a locked processor that has 4 cores and 8 threads, and runs at 3.6 GHz. I couldn't find too much about the motherboard, but I do know that the chipset was H110. The computer also had 8GB of DDR4 RAM, running at an unknown speed, which I assumed would be about 2133 MHz. For the graphics card, it came with a GTX 1063GB card, which is pretty good, especially due to the mining craze. To boot up, the PC included a 120GB SSD and a 1TB hard drive to download any large applications or games. In the description, I also found the claim that it came with a 500-watt power supply, so I took that into mind. Finally, the computer had a pretty average looking case, and was bundled with both Windows 10 and a mouse and keyboard combo. I immediately got to work making my own parts list. As expected, I added the same i7-7700 used in the build, which set us back about $290. Then I added the Gigabyte GA-H110M, a $40 micro ATX motherboard that both supports our CPU and has the same chipset as the one used in the build. Next up, I added two 4GB sticks of RAM. This totals 8GB, and these sticks run at 2133 MHz each, costing about $90. For the 120GB boot SSD, I chose the Team 5 Lite, which costs $43. This would ensure super fast boot times, as well as having enough capacity to install all of your commonly used applications. To install games and other mass storage, I added a Western Digital Blue 1TB hard drive. This $45 drive runs at 7200 RPM and has 64 MB of cache. I then added the same GPU used in the pre-built, the GTX 1063GB. In this case, I added MSI's version of the card, and it costed about $275. The Thermaltake Versa case supported our micro ATX board and only costed $40, so I added that as well. Seasonic's M12i 520-watt power supply fits the requirement for being over 500 watts and is 80 plus bronze certified. It costs $50, so I added it to the build. Finally, I added a copy of Windows 10 by Kingwin and a Cooler Master mouse and keyboard combo for $30 each. The custom computer came to a total of about $930. If we go back to the pre-built's MSRP, it was $1,050. This means you could save about $120 by simply building your own computer. While this isn't as major as some cases, it is still something to take into consideration. Overall though, I'm not too bothered by this pre-built. If you really can't build your own, it's not something that is completely horrible for the price. It also is a way to get away from having to spend an absurd amount on a graphics card or RAM. Now that we have gotten this out of the way, let's get into this episode's next PC. The second PC I found on Amazon.com, posted by Skytech Gaming, and costed $1,250. Inside was a Ryzen 5 1500X, an unlocked 4-core 8-thread processor, as well as 16GB of DDR4 RAM. Along with that came a 250GB SATA SSD and a 1TB HDD. The graphics card was a GTX 1063GB card, which seemed pretty good due to the current mining situation. It also boasted liquid cooling, featuring a 120mm radiator, as most liquid-cooled pre-builts do. The case was provided by Cougar. The build also claimed 802.11g Wi-Fi. Not the best Wi-Fi standard out there, and I would have been impressed to see 802.11 AC. Finally, the pre-built came with Windows 10 installed, and another one of those cheap mouse and keyboards we continue to see. I added the Ryzen 5 1500X to my parts list, which currently costs just under $160. Then I added the Cooler Master Master Liquid Light 120mm liquid cooler to match the cooling used in the pre-built. I added the MSI B350 Pro VDH motherboard to the build, which is a micro ATX board, but has a full 4 DIMMs for RAM upgradability. Speaking of DIMMs, I added a 16GB kit of dual channel memory by Team Elite for $144. For storage, I matched both the 250GB SSD for $70 by Kingston and the 1TB HDD by Western Digital for $43. Obviously, the graphics card was probably the most difficult product to find, but I was able to squeeze a GTX 1063GB card for $275. For the case, I added the $25 Cougar MX330. I chose the $50 Seasonic M12i power supply. This is a fully modular bronze-rated 520 watt power supply and is most likely far more reliable than what was used in the pre-built. Finally, I added Windows 10 Home for $30 by Kingwin, a $20 802.11g Wi-Fi connector, and a cheap mouse and keyboard combo for $30 by Cooler Master. The total cost of my build came to $900. It used all the same components, if not better, and you end up saving $350. I am able to confidently say that this pre-built is definitely not worth it. If you're looking for something in this price range, I definitely suggest building your own or looking somewhere else. So far, I have noticed that Newegg is a decent place to look for pre-builts, as seen in the first example. The price gap was 3 times lower than this example. Needless to say, with the extra $350, you could easily upgrade your processor, graphics card, other components, or even the peripherals you are planning to get with this build. This pre-built does not get my stamp of approval. I hope everyone enjoyed the video and maybe learned a thing or two. As previously mentioned, I definitely suggest learning how to build your own computer over buying a pre-built or a console. It isn't too hard to do and adds personality to your system while saving you money in many cases. Before I end the video, I want to point everyone to my Discord. The link is down below, and we just hit 200 members, which is awesome. Also, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, share with your friends, and even consider subscribing. Without further ado, this is King Christo signing off. Peace out.